Hello, this is TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick, and we are at Broadband World Forum 2016 here in London's Docklands. And I'm talking with Daniel Willis, who is in charge of, General Manager of FTTX, we can talk about that in a minute, Daniel, in the Chief Technology Office at the new National Broadband Network in Australia.
Yes.
Daniel, it's great to talk to you. I have followed with considerable interest over many years now the events that have taken place in Australia, and the fact that you have an absolutely unique position in that your government determined that Australia would have a brand new broadband network from scratch, an absolutely clean page in terms of technology, and you're underway with it. So tell us, to begin with, before we get into anything more specific, how is that program going? How much has been deployed, and where is it now?
Yeah, so it is a very unique thing we've got in Australia. I'm very proud of it, I think, and in my area in technology, it's a unique experience that I've got to be able to work on such a big project. So in Australia, the mandate of the National Broadband Network is to roll out the national network, so 100% coverage of the whole country. We use a mixture of technologies to help us deal with all the different use cases we have in Australia for connecting our end users, the Australian population. So we use a mixture of, originally we started with FTTP, 93%, and the remaining 7% with the get to the lower density areas was fixed wireless and then satellite. So over the course of the project, which has been running since 2009, we've added on to that 93%. We've also brought in FTDN and HFC DOCSIS into the mix as well. So we're using also a mixture of VDSL and DOCSIS to leverage off the existing coax and copper plant in Australia to help our rollout go faster and in a more cost-effective manner. So in terms of rollout, our main targets are 8 million homes by 2020. We're at around 3 million homes passed now, and over 1 million active live customers on the network over a combination of all those technologies. We've just launched our second dedicated broadband satellite, so that's the SkyMuster 2, and SkyMuster 1 went up around this time last year, and that's a state-of-the-art 6-ton Ka band satellite, 2 of them, covering the whole country, but with a primary focus on delivering broadband to the very rural, remote areas in sort of the main centre of Australia.
So Daniel, does the new network have the dimension, the capability to accommodate the fantastic rise that has been in the amount of video traffic crossing modern networks with the emergence of things like Netflix and so on? You have the opportunity, you have this blank page, you're starting from scratch. Have you built in enough resilience to be able to cope with whatever applications and services can throw at the network?
We believe so, yes. So we've definitely seen the big rise in network traffic. We started the network with 93% FTTP and very early offered gigabit services, so that drove quite high dimensioning in the core networks. As we bring on FTDN and HFC, we believe that core network dimensioning that we planned for on day one, basically, we're always planning for 100% coverage of the nation. And had some fairly good forecasts looking forward, which are tracking quite well now over the last 6-7 years of operation. Our predictions on the traffic have been quite good. In fact, in some cases are tracking a little bit higher than the forecast, but we're well within the capacity of the network. We had the luxury of building a network day one from scratch with no legacy, and could build in a lot of very high capacity to allow for that future growth. And we're also looking at the evolution paths from all our access technologies, from satellite, wireless, and all the wireline fibre copper coax, and making sure all those technologies can evolve to a gigabit target.
Daniel, I will remember, you will remember too, that when the new network was first mooted, it was a political football for a long time. That's settled down and now is just it's an established fact of life.
Yes.
What is the reaction of the population to that section of the population that is now being passed and is actually connected to the network? What's the feedback been like? Because lots and lots and lots of operators say that the most important thing they have is a customer, but they don't. Very often they don't bother to listen to the feedback they're getting from them. I hope that this is different.
I think definitely in NBN there's a very strong focus on our customer response, and we've really got, our customers are really the service providers, but of course they're serving the end users, the consumers in the end, and we have equipment in consumers' homes to deliver the NBN, and installers going into homes for some of the technologies. So we need to have a good presentation into the home users and the population that we're serving. We track our Net Promoter Score, so look at how likely users of the NBN are likely to promote it to others. So there is a very strong focus from our senior executive to track the acceptance and the feedback from our customers and end users, and make sure we can then, once we track it, then we can react to it and improve it. And then, in fact, has been improving over the last few years. The main complaint we get, if you talk to people around the place, is they don't have the NBN. So generally the ones who have it are pretty happy, and then everyone else is asking, when do I get it? So
that's good.
Yeah.
Now, we looked at the domestic user, the end consumer in that way. What about enterprise? Do you provide different services and different, obviously it's the same base technology,
yes,
but what's the difference between the domestic market and the enterprise market?
So primarily we do offer enterprise services. We're looking at evolving our platforms to have some more higher end enterprise options. But essentially with things like FTTP, we've got a lot of capacity we can use for enterprise-like services. The main difference is the quality of service we offer. So we do already have, from day one, had quality of service built in to the products, from a internet best effort grade service up to a committed bit rate. Mm-hmm. So it's primarily the committed bit rate, symmetrical services that the business business customers require. And then we're looking at other things like non-premises connectivity, connections to equipment outside of the typical residential or business office, things like city services and traffic control systems and that sort of thing.
The last question to you, which is this. Your general manager, FTTX, fibre to the whatever it might be, eventually. You're working with new technology all the time. You mentioned GFast and other such technologies. You're working with Nokia on this, I understand. Why that particular technology or those technologies? What do they bring to the NBN that wasn't there before? And why Nokia rather than any other manufacturer?
Well, Nokia have been one of our primary carriers since day one, primary providers since day one, so they were awarded the original contracts for the FTTP technology that we're deploying, and also a lot of our core network aggregation switching equipment. So they've been not just a vendor, but also a prime engineering resource as well. As part of the contracts, we also bring in engineering capability from our vendors as well. Nokia aren't the only vendor, but one of the main ones we're working with on the fixed access equipment. They're also our primary VDSL vendor. In the CTO, we're not necessarily constrained to looking at technology options from one vendor only, so we do definitely talk to others in the industry to make sure we're getting the industry best practices and best quality. So we have been doing some work on GFast and also more recently XGFast. This in the CTO group is more around looking at what the future options are for NBN. We've got a very well-performing FTTP and, in my domain, VDSL network. Very happy with the performance of the VDSL2 systems. But we need to, as you said before, with the traffic demands going up, we need to make sure we have a plan in place to deliver high-speed services where there's requirements for it. We've also recently announced 700,000 premises of fibre to the curb or fibre to the distribution point, depending on where you sit in the industry. And this is starting with VDSL on FTTC, but it's an obvious and quite a clear stepping point to a GFast-based FTTC network, which we think, because of the very short copper distance we're looking at for those sort of deployments, in the order of less than 100 metres from the street to the home, gives us a really good way of delivering very high-speed services, but also reusing the existing copper network and avoiding all the high cost and logistical challenges you get on running fibre all the way into the premises, putting equipment on the inside wall of the house, and in a lot of ways helping that end user experience by having a fairly easy to connect in-house network experience.
Daniel, I said that was my last question, but I am going to ask you one more, which has come to me as you've been chatting. There's huge emphasis in the industry on network transformation. With the NBN, the network was transformed before it started.
Yes.
You have a transformed network. Given that, and given also the emphasis which is on cloudification, virtualization as well, how important is SDN and NFV going to be in the NBN?
I think it'll be very important, and from a few different aspects. From the perspective of the NBN using that sort of technology, that will help, I believe, our network equipment rollout. If we can get common functions on network functionality, storage, compute, that if you look at what we've got in exchanges today, we typically pay for exchange space in existing legacy equipment. We pay for the floor space and the power. If we can collapse equipment functions down into generic white label boxes and move all the control functionality into common SDN platforms, that presents quite an interesting application just from a network perspective. Also, of course, the whole industry and the country is moving into that sort of environment. We have to be able to support it as well. So there's the use and the applications we could use on SDN and NFV, and we've definitely got a lot of focus on that in the CTO particularly, and looking at how do we evolve the network into that sort of environment. And then also support our customers, essentially the Australian population, on having a network infrastructure, which is what really NBN is. It's a critical infrastructure we're building for Australia. Make sure that can support a cloud SDN world going forward.
Really interesting stuff, and great to hear from somebody who's actually doing all this every day, because much as you read about the NBN, it's great to have somebody who's actually deeply involved in it. So,
yeah, very lucky.
Daniel Willis, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.